too expensive and therefore might lead politicians into not performing what they're supposed to do, indeed, collecting bribes. Now, Algun Bagbin, in addressing some NGOs, said that indeed politicians are Ghanaians and that sometimes they may collect bribes in terms of lobbying for other companies. Is it true? The media then comes up and says, oh, give us names, making it seem as if we don't know what's happening. He then comes back and says, stop living like ostriches. Are we living like ostriches? Are we probably taking our developments before voting people into power? And therefore, when they come into power, they've already paid their dues and they have nothing more to give us. That's what's on the table today. Are we living like ostriches? Or indeed, it doesn't happen. My name is Nana Sakwao, and this is PM Express. When I come back, I am talking to Daniel Batadan, Executive Director of African Parliamentarians Network Against Corruption. It's going to be a fabulous conversation. Stay tuned. Well, it started with Algun Bagbin, but I think the issue spread much, much further than that. It's got, more fundamental roots than what he just said. It all happens in the process by which one has to go through to get themselves into parliament. Indeed, the costs and the troubles, by the time they get there, are they able to perform their duties perfectly like they're supposed to do? And that's what we are going to discuss today. And Daniel has been our guest here before, and welcome, my brother.
Thank you, Nana.
Good to have you back.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure.
Yes. Daniel, there's going to be a broad conversation, even though it starts with Algun Bagbin. I want us to look at it, well further than what he said. But my first question I ask you is the cost at which one has to incur before they get into parliament. Is it going to make you corrupt?
Well, thank you very much, and good evening to your listeners. I think I like the way you put it, and I hope we will really not spend so much time talking about what Honorable Bagbin said and all that, because I'm beginning to feel that we are a country of talkatives. We are so unemployed and so much unconcerned about productive things that we can be doing, that when somebody goes and spits anything, sneezes, then we pick that and spend all our time on it. So I really hope we don't spend so much time. But it is a fact. I think I like the broader issue you are raising about the cost of getting elected. That is an issue we should probably be looking at in a more broader context of the kind of system we are running. I think if we are not careful, people may begin to question the very value of democracy itself and multipartyism, so to speak. Because it appears to me that it is getting so much costly by the day, whether it is an internal party issue, for instance, just holding party-level internal elections. I mean, you hear all these allegations of bribing voters, vote buying, and so on, and then after that you bring it to the national level. Of course, one of the principles of running a democracy is internal party politics. And if we don't get our internal party politics right, there is no way we can get the national politics right. So for me, the worry already begins, and it is at the core of it, the cost of getting elected, not just to parliament, but to a party leadership position. How much does it cost? Who is sponsoring all these costs. And then at the end, the broader issue of accountability. To whom does a person who finally gets elected become accountable? Because if you, Nana, should be the one behind my ability to campaign and get elected, when I finally get elected, am I going to start thinking of the people who elected me and the purpose for which they elected me, whilst you are waiting behind and saying, well, you know all that it took for me to get you to this place.
I sold my house to give you the money.
So it then makes our so-called elected representatives preoccupied with things other than what we send them to Parliament to do, which is basically three. We send them to go and represent us, which is the representation function of an MP. We send them to go and make laws, which is the legislative function, and we send them to Parliament to exercise oversight over the executive. That means that they should control our national purse, which is deposited with the executive. And that is how the whole governance infrastructure is set up. And so when people that you send to this institution, and mind you, I want us to be careful the way we look at these things. Bagby made a point in his submission which I think was taken out of context. He says that, we are all talking about corruption in the society and giving different reasons why there is corruption. And the members of Parliament are also part of this society of which we are discussing the corruption. So why do we think that although there is corruption all over the place and we ourselves are even contributing to it, why do we expect that the people we send to Parliament are suddenly angels and saints? I think the point was that those representing us in Parliament are from our society. They are from our homes. They are our relatives. They didn't drop from anywhere. So if we are the way we are talking about corruption these days as if it is, and it's not as if, but it appears that we are saying there is corruption everywhere. Why do we think there may not be corruption in Parliament? So I think that was the point he tried to make. And he has been in Parliament since 1993. The fourth Republican Parliament. So the man knows exactly what he is talking about. He will not be able to mention names. He will not like to mention names because who knows? He might end up mentioning a name which might resemble his own. So, the point is not about proof. And I think when we have this kind of conversation, and I hear people saying, well, we are going to pull him to come and give proof. Come on. What proof do we need? We work with the parliaments and parliamentarians, not only in Ghana, but all over the world. These are issues that are there in the open every day. In the UK, don't you hear the scandals? The difference between us and them is that they put the problem on the table and discuss it and find ways of dealing with it and make sure that the agencies and institutions that are mandated to tackle them do exactly that. But here, we like to bend our heads down and say, this is honorable. We don't say this. It's not. In fact, the term honorable, I think, has been overused and misused.
Denigrated.
In Canada, for instance, it's not everybody. It doesn't. If you are in Parliament, you don't. That doesn't qualify you to be called honorable. Honorable is a title that is given just to people who occupy ministerial positions. But you see, we have diluted the value of this thing so much that anybody who steps into a certain place, we start saying honorable, even when they are doing dishonorable things. So I would wish we looked at the broader picture. I agree with you that it is an issue that has sparked debate. I think it is an unnecessary debate. We are wasting our time. Ababin has not said anything we didn't know before. It is just an inconvenient truth. That's all about it.
As a society, and I don't know if this is in your jurisdiction, why have we become so hypocritical as a society? And it doesn't only fall in politics. When you take politics, when you take culture, when you take religion, everything that stares us in the face, it doesn't matter how prevalent it is, we are able to turn a blind eye. If you look at teenage pregnancy, if you look at homosexuality, if you look at fake pastors, we are able to turn a blind eye as if it doesn't exist and therefore don't talk about it. Why have we become like that?
Well, that is a very difficult question for a simple person like me to be able to explain. But I think, you're right. The bulk of Ghanaians are religious people. So sometimes I'm wondering who are the people committing the crimes? Because the churches are full, the mosques are full. In fact, Ghanaians and Africans generally are homo religiosos par excellence. We don't, everything of ours is religious, and yet...
By His grace.
Yeah, and yet the crime is perpetrated everywhere. I think, as I keep on saying all the time, you know, the difference between us and the people in the other parts of the world that we claim are developed and that are democratic and have built strong democracies is that they realize, and in America in particular, the citizenry grew with the knowledge that, look, you must always be suspicious of people that you give power to. That is a culture that Americans have learned. That, look, always be suspicious of people in power because you can never trust that they are going to exercise that power in your interest. So what they do is they put in place mechanisms, institutional mechanisms, they put in place laws, and they put in place so that they free the person in power. I remember our president saying one time that it is easier to be a president in America than in any African country. That is perfectly true. Because when you are a president in America, you yourself, you are just performing a function within a system. The rest of the things are for other people to do. If it is a matter that belongs to the judiciary will handle it. If it is a matter, and in fact, most of the time in America, when the president wants to get a policy put in place or a law, most of the work he has to do is more with his own party people because he needs to convince them. They will not go and vote for just because they belong to his party. He has to do his homework to convince them that this is actually going to serve the agenda that we promised to deliver to our people. And so those are the basic differences. And here we are too focused on the personalities. Even this issue that Bagbin has put out, he has, of course, maybe, I always say that, well, if you go for controversy, it's controversy you will get. But, you know, I don't think it is about Honorable Bagbin. No, it is really about how our system is working and how our institutions, whether we are building institutions of integrity. And then this is going down to all facets of life. To a point, and I like the point you make, that is it that we have suddenly changed or it has always been like that? And is it really a matter of us not being realistic? I think we are very hypocritical by nature. Most of us are hypocritical. Look, I have been to places where I hear people saying, this man is a thief, he's like... The person arrives and everybody is bowing and doing this. So you ask yourself, I said, is that not the man you said is a thief? But but you see, he's a big man. So you get confused. You don't know what are the values and what are the basis of these things. So I think as a society, we need to get out of that shell where we are hiding and portraying ourselves as different people. We are good people. Most of us in Africa have argued at fora across the world that Africans are generally good people. When even you come to my house, I may not have much, but the little I have, I will share with you. We are good people. But you see, in modern governance and democracy, we are not talking about good people. We need good systems. If you have good systems, you and I sitting here, Nana, if you go to UK today, you will obey all the laws. Because if you don't obey, you know what will happen. You know when you go wrong, exactly what will happen to you. How many times have we not heard of resignations by people in public office just over allegations? Nana, allegations, not proven. No. Here we are always talking about proof. And let me be very straight with you. When I hear people, especially in occupying public or political office, saying bring proof, then I say, oh, that is already a sign that they are not ready to deal with the problem. Because you see, sometimes the proof is very difficult. Sometimes the proof is with the person asking you to bring it. So how do you provide the proof? If you are keeping the proof and you say I should bring proof, where am I going to get it from? So I think we may get there. I think what I'm seeing now, which I'm happy about, by the way, especially the kind of work we do, sometimes you kind of feel that when are we going to get over this? But I think sometimes it has to get so bad before it gets better.
Okay, let me just run this scenario past you. So I want to become, let's say, MP in Dansoma.
Yeah.
So, and especially when biometric came in, every MP needs to go and hire a bus. And then you go to the community to take the people in there, bring them to the biometric station, get them to biometric. Most of them, what they were doing now is you have to go a little bit beyond Dansoma, convince people there, bus them to your community so that when the voting comes, you are guaranteed that they will vote for you. And all this is a bill that the MP has to pay. And because you're bringing them, you need to feed them and give them 5 cedis. And then the cost of the bus. So are we genuinely saying that this guy is so in love with the country that he's going to spend all this money just so that he gets the opportunity to serve us?
That's an interesting one. And indeed, that is a question I've been asking myself. And sometimes I ask some of my friends in politics who don't mind. I say, you people, all this hassle you are going through, is it that you love the country more than some of us or what? Because you get up, you do all these things, you borrow money, you run all kinds of things, and at the end, by the time the campaign is over, people are indebted, they have sold their things and all that. And then you think I am expecting that you are coming to sit in parliament and be thinking about us? In fact, I think every normal person, when you go through that, your major preoccupation first will be to think of how to deal with all the excesses, the excess baggage you have carried into parliament. And so it is not surprising. But let us be fair to our politicians. It is a demand and supply thing. It is not that the politicians themselves just go out dishing all these monies and all that. It is something sometimes that very often it is demanded. I recall that when I was at GII in 2004, we went around doing some campaign against vote buying. And we went all over the country telling people that, look, when politicians come to give you money to vote for them, don't mind them, refuse the money because they are buying your conscience. They were laughing at us. You know why? They said that you don't know what you are talking about. If they bring the money, we will collect it because we need it. And we know that if we don't collect it now, we will never find them again. So it is an accountability issue. And I think that when looking at it in that sense, if you come looking for their votes and they know that you are not going to be accountable to them after the elections, what they do is to extract whatever they can while you are available. And then they know that they have to wait for another 4 years. So what I propose to them is that when you are collecting, make sure you collect enough to take you to the next election. Because if this is the logic, then you are finished. So I mean, it is an interesting thing, but I think it is something that we don't have the kind of time we seem to need to build our democracy. People keep on saying that, America took 200 years to build their democracy.
Let me come back on that. But with regard, the funniest sign I think I saw was no T-shirts, no votes. And I thought that is the lowest I've ever seen. It's no T-shirt. I've seen no lights, no votes, no water, no vote. But no T-shirt, no votes was the lower one. When we come back, we're going to look at the 200-year experience that Americans went through. Do we need to go through the same, or can we just pick their blueprint and correct ours? Stay tuned. Well, the argument is that maybe our democracy is young and that, America has gone through 200-300 years. That's why they are today. But then can you pick up their blueprints and learn from their mistakes and just don't do the things they do? Or is it an evolutionary thing that whether you like it or not, you need to go through the same mistakes until you mature as a people, Daniel?
Well, we are now in a different age. We are in an age of globalization. And there are many things, as we are sitting here, you and I can learn in a much shorter time than our fathers and forefathers used to do. So I think we should be careful to think that because America and some countries used 200 years to build their democracy. Of course, America had nothing to learn from. Which other country had practiced the kind of democracy they started? So they needed all that time. They made their own mistakes and corrected them. We have come, let's say, 200 years later and trying to practice what America has done. We don't need to go around and make the same mistakes they made because they have even corrected those mistakes. So we should just move on with the corrections. If we were to say that because America used 200 years to build their democracy, we are only 20 years, that means we are saying that we still have 180 years to make mistakes and correct them. That would be a joke. I mean, it would be a serious joke. I think we don't need to reinvent the wheel. I think one of the challenges I believe we have faced with our democracy in general is our inability to adapt it to our own settings in a way. And I'm not talking about relativizing the principles, because sometimes people like to say, oh, we are Africans, so we are not white people, we are not Americans. So no, when it comes to principles, I think we are making excuses in that way. When we talk about adapting democracy to suit ourselves, there are some things. In fact, there are a lot of good things that we had even before this Western type democracy came to us. And we had methods and ways of practicing good governance, conflict management and conflict resolution. Even you are a traditional chief, you know this. Mm-hmm. So what we needed to do was to take the principles that are relevant to consolidate the good things we already had. In fact, part of the conflicts and the things that came to us were imported. And we did not have to import them, but maybe we were powerless and we had to bear with them. But we've come of age. Over 50, now we are 57 years as an independent country. We should be able to find ways of resolving these things and moving forward. And I think, again, one of the important factors that is impeding our development democratically is the extreme partisanship that we have in our country. Nana, I am sad. I feel sad when in my dealings with parliamentarians and the way I see how many of them are friends across board. In fact, some of the closest people in parliament at personal level are from opposing sides, some of them that we know. But look at what we get out there, and look at what our people, especially the followers, the so-called foot soldiers, and what impression do they have? They think that this is a tug of war between their party and the other side, which is not true at all. And I think that whilst we may say that we are still evolving in our democracy, I think when it comes to negative things, like reducing everything to partisan politics, I think we should be able to get rid of such things quickly. And the standards must be set for everybody to follow that. You know, when you come before us as citizens, the questions we want to ask you is the things you are doing, the laws you are passing, the policies you are making, to what extent do they serve our public and common interests? If not, if it is about winning or scoring political points, that is not of interest to us. And I think that is where the role of the citizens also comes in. We have still got a very weak citizenry that is not showing signs of a capacity to demand accountability from the people who serve us. It is partly attitudinal, you know, the big man attitude. But because most of our people know, they know the people that represent them. Sometimes they even wonder how they themselves elected those people. You see, which is partly what you said earlier, that maybe they were influenced. But you know, how long can you be deceived as a grown-up, you know? Because the voting age is 18.
Let me throw this in. That, do you think that partisanship, you know, that extreme partisanship also has contributed to the peace we have in the country? Now, I say this because, you see, presently, it doesn't matter how much you turn off the lights in Dansoman. All the NDC people there will keep quiet, because if they say anything, it means they are embarrassed. So it's only the MP people who are going to shout. And then eventually, when their president comes into power and the same lights go off, they will keep quiet, because if you say anything, then we are embarrassing ourselves. So maybe, you know, that is keeping us quite peaceful as a people, because at every given time, 50% of the country is quiet, because if you lament, you're embarrassing your side. And we will go to any extent to depend whatever political party that we support. I mean, could it be that's why we have not kicking off and having Arab Springs and all that?
Well, I'm afraid there is a cost to this so-called peace. First of all, I'm not sure it's peace when half of the community is quiet, not because they are not suffering, but because they dare not come out because their party is in government. I think that is a pretense. That is cemetery peace. And I'm sure you don't want to enjoy that kind of peace. But I think the more important issue is that we are not looking at what it is costing us, all of us, at the end of the day, this extreme partisanship. I mean, I don't want to go back to the court case, because that one was a matter of law and a matter of constitution. But look, have Ghanaians sat down to think about how much this country, all of us, it doesn't matter whether you are MPP or NDC, lost last year? We are sitting down complaining about the economy and how things have gone down. We don't know how much we lost, and I wouldn't say we wasted, because it was not about wasting. I think the point you are making about the peace we are enjoying, maybe we needed to go through that so that there will be peace. But at what cost? At what cost? Look, in other jurisdictions, and I dare say this, in other parts of the world, there will be a different way of looking at the law and the way it will cost. America would look at how much is this so-called due process going to cost us, and what kind of reasoning can we bring to bear on our jurisprudence, so that at the same time that we want to have the rule of law and democracy and all that, we don't let it come at the cost of our very survival as a nation. And we don't do these things. So when you talk about the extreme partisanship being a source of peace, my argument will be that, well, the cost of having that kind of peace might not be worth the while. Maybe we just need to get to up our game in terms of rationalizing the things we do, and maybe we will realize that, you know, sometimes we could. I think Ghanaians, we have a habit of wanting to create problems and then solve them, and then say that, you see how great we are, we can even solve any problem. I think it will be more sensible for us not to create the problems than to create them and solve them and be great for having been able to solve the great problems we created, which could have been avoided. I like that way of looking at it also, because it seems that at the end of the day, it's about learning how to laugh at ourselves. I mean, it's, you know, when we turn these into comic reliefs, serious matters that have serious consequences, because you see, our economy is going down, and some of it is because we are doing party politics. My brother, we are spending too much time in Ghana doing politics. Look, there has to be a period between elections and the next elections where we talk development, where we talk policy, where we talk about, you know, other things. But we cannot spend our lives from one election to the next just doing only politics. I think that is a dangerous path to follow. And when I travel out of this country and people keep praising us that, oh, Ghana, you people, you are wonderful. You are always having peaceful elections. I say, my brother, you think we are having peaceful elections? I'm not sure people are having peace after the elections, because, and I'm sure you know it.
But if you compare us to some African countries, you know, that we come out as Jesus Christ. I mean, we are very, very, you know, good if you compare, even though maybe it's a wrong yardstick to be comparing with, but within the African countries, I think, you know, we are shining.
Nana, political success or electoral success must lead to something else. It must come with something on the table for the ordinary people. You see, because if you consider that a lot of our people are illiterate, they don't go, all these constitutional terms we use bandy around, they don't make sense to people. If at the end of the day something comes to the table, then that becomes the fruit of democracy. When people realize that, oh, now with our multi-party system of governance and the fact that you can change government or the party in government every now and then, anytime that happens, people get better in their livelihood, in the quality of life. That is where democracy will make sense. But if we are only going to look at democracy and good governance from the political dimension, I think we'll be going on a dangerous path. And much as all of us are happy at the progress we have made politically, you know, but we now have to move beyond that. We have to take the political success, the electoral success, the fact that we have been holding. Look, Nana, we need to check how much elections are costing us. How much are elections? Every 4 years, for the last 20 years, every 4 years we are changing the system of doing the election. You remember when we started in '93 with the one type of voting? It changed. Then they said our pictures. We brought the pictures. Then they are now saying electronic. We brought them, and the electronic came and cost us something else. I mean, is it biometric, not electronic? Biometric came and cost us something else. Now, who knows what is going to be requested for the next election. So where is the space for us to engage in development dialogue? Where is the space?
And one thing about elections is we always blame the illiterate. I have heard supposed very, very educated people who say, as for me, because I'm MPP or I'm NDC, I will not vote. And they are not open to listen to any argument or anything. And this is a university graduate who you suppose that he will sit back, look at some arguments on the table and decide that, oh no, I think for this particular situation, it's better to go right or it's better to go left. But no, as for me, I am MPP or I'm NDC and I won't budge. And these are very educated people.
Well, when I was talking of illiteracy, I didn't really mean, we have to be careful. It doesn't mean reading and writing is the solution. In fact, there are a lot of people who haven't been to school who have more common sense than many of us who believe that we have had education which has not taken us anywhere. What I actually mean is that democracy or any system of governance we adopt must be such that people see that is the way to achieve their beatific vision or whatever aspirations they have in their life. That is what I mean. It doesn't matter the name you call it. The reason why they must see that is that otherwise they will say, oh, but it used to even be better when we had a dictator. Mm-hmm. Haven't you heard people saying that? I mean, whether it is in South Africa or anywhere, people have said, during apartheid, we were even better. Now, when people begin to say that, it means that the system you have adopted is not working in their interest. And maybe it is not that the system is bad, but the way we are applying it. And look at this, our country, and the way we treat the rule of law. Not everybody is equal before the law in Ghana. You sit somewhere and people do things, and when you say, this thing is not allowed, they ask you that, do you know me? Do you know who I am? Because you see, you have to know who I am before you think of the law to apply. And these are issues they are commonsensical, but they affect the way our governance works.
Then in order to reduce corruption in high places, I mean, you can't eliminate it, you can only reduce it. Can we have a consensus where all these big players come together and form like what we have in the traditional settings, where even though they are opposing sides, they need to work together? So even if you came to the palace and we all sat, the guy sitting next to you could be completely against, but they don't go and sit on the left and this one sit on the right. We all sat there. Mm-hmm. The opposing ones are sat in the middle, and we are all jaw-jawing. And, there are some chiefs also in there who don't necessarily agree with you, the big chief, but, he's also part of the game and we are playing. Can we come to that consensus? Because otherwise, this division, because as soon as the MPP finish their executive elections, they are going to tear the government apart when they are done. And they will not let the president sleep for love or money. But then, like you're saying, the bigger picture is that the state suffers. Can they come together? Is it possible?
Well, it is not just about them coming together by themselves. Sometimes, and that is where the vacuum in our governance is. The demand side. Sometimes the people, the citizens, have to put the pressure on them to do what we think they need to be doing. Because, for instance, you go to other jurisdictions and, before a member of parliament makes a decision about a major policy issue, whether it's abortion, whether it's gay rights and all those things, look, all the information they need to receive from their constituents. And they have to attend to them. They have researchers who sit down, take all the opinions, and summarize them and make the member of parliament or congressman or senator aware of what the constituents they represent are expecting and demanding. And then they go in that direction. Because if you don't do that, you have already sacked yourself from whether it's the Congress or the House of Commons or other things. But we don't have that. And that is where the deficit.
Your voting stays on your record, so they know that you voted this way on this issue.
No, there is information. There is information and there is transparency. I think those are things we cannot emphasize enough. You see, here, look at us. We have had a freedom of information draft law which is 11 years old as draft. because we are afraid to do what it needs to be done, because you see, information is power.
Let me take a break. When we come back, is 4 years too long? Should we keep them in power longer to reduce the pressure in terms to reduce the corruption? What do you think, Sitchin? Well, what an interesting discussion it is. And we're saying everything as if it's news, but it's not. However, there's a great percentage of us who are pretending that it's news and that we want proof. But before we go on, Daniel, you see, most countries should be run by the learned, the wise, and the loyal, if you ask me. Now, I watched some parliamentary proceedings. Some of them, you never hear them talk. And some of them, you hear them in an interview, and there's no depth. There's no depth, and you think, wow, this guy blew me with his idea, and comparing something. It's very, and the president, my president said this, and our party said this, and the president said this, and those things will not move a country forward. How then do you get good caliber of people to come at a lesser cost? At a lesser cost. How do we do that?
Well, if you take the experiences of some countries, and I found it interesting in countries like Uganda and some others where people have even talked about qualification, like that you must have a certain minimum qualification. It doesn't have to be academic. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a professor or something, but they some basic standards. I think it helps. I mean, as for people, whether they keep quiet or talk, I think it's better to keep quiet than to talk nonsense, because, you waste people's time for nothing. And I think that the responsibility for people to live up to certain standards should not also depend on the people themselves. And very often that is what I think we are doing. We are always saying that the MPs are not doing this. The government is not doing this. These people are not doing this. But what are we doing to make or hold them accountable or hold them responsible for what they are supposed to do? We too have a responsibility. The whole thing is, as I keep saying, a demand-supply issue. And if we think that we are just going to sit down and good governance will be supplied to us, we will wait for a long time. I think we need to develop the standards as a society and let people live up to some fundamental standards. And that is why I said earlier that, in certain societies, there are certain things. If you are in a certain position, if you are a member of parliament, you cannot stoop to certain levels. If you do, the society expects you to resign by yourself because you have gone below the standard. Do we have such standards in our society? I'm not sure. And let me go back to the issue. You may not like it. It also boils down to the partisanship and the standards we set. We set a different set of standards for our opponents. If you are in NDC, this one is okay. If you are in MPP, it is wrong. That's the same thing. Yes, yeah. The same thing is wrong when it has to do with. We have to rise above that level of partisanship and understand that. And I think that has to start from that chamber. That chamber there where we see people from the different side. We need to see them raising the standard in parliament. Because, you see, I keep saying that the representation of being a representative of people, for me, must also mean representing the best of the people, the best of their values, not the worst of them. So when I see some of the things that happen, when I hear some of the things that MPs say, they scandalize me. I ask, what do you expect the young ones to take from you? I mean, and this idea of copying by heart, as we call it. They say, oh, haven't you seen congressmen fighting in the US or in Ukraine or in Canada? So you should come and be fighting here when our young children and young ones don't understand, because they take that house, that that chamber to be a sacred chamber. That's why we conduct school children and all that into our parliaments, to look at how our honorable people conduct themselves and conduct business. And then you sit there and do things that scandalize the young ones, and they go home confused instead of being enlightened. I think these are responsibilities and standards that we all have to set for ourselves And Americans have done that for themselves. Germans have done that for themselves. Africans must do it for ourselves. If we don't do it for ourselves, nobody is going to do it for us.
Then on the larger question of trying to reduce corruption, now, because it's so expensive to get in the house, it's really expensive. And I'm talking, people spend thousands and thousands and thousands to get themselves in the house. If you give this guy 4 years, because that's is guaranteed 4 years, he or she needs to recoup this money in 4 years and then come back and try their luck to see if they'll give me another 10. If we increase the term in office, maybe he's got a longer time to recoup the capital, and therefore we'll probably have time to focus on their work. But 4 years to pay back and then see what you can do. Maybe we are putting too much pressure on them.
We have to be careful about that argument, because if you have bad people in parliament and you prolong the period, you are going to have a longer time of having bad governance. So I'm not sure it's so much about that. We have the same cycle as the U.S. It's just the months which are different. Every 4 years they have elections in the U.S. You see, Nana, there has to be a period of doing politics, campaign politics, a period of looking and reflecting on policy making and what needs to be done, not only for the party in government, even the opposition. The opposition, because you see, we are having a vicious cycle which needs to be turned into a virtuous cycle. And that requires some serious thinking.
Let me jump in here. I've had MPP NDC guests here.
Yes.
And sometimes I ask them that, are you saying that, like they read the budget or anything, every single individual on the MPP side says this is nonsense.
Yes.
Every single individual on the NDC side says this is the best thing they've ever seen.
Yes.
And is there not one single person in there who finds something right or wrong in it? But it seems to be institutional thinking rather than individual thinking. So, where do we go?
Well, people keep saying it is our whip system. You remember I told you earlier that, in the U.S., when the president wants to have something done, he first has to convince his own people. Because if they are not convinced, they will not follow. But here we keep on saying that we have a system, a whip system, whereby people are whipped. Of course, I know and I believe that there are always people on each side of the house who disagree internally with what is going on, but they dare not put it out. Mm-hmm. And that is the context in which we need to look at what Honorable Bagbin said, although I was happy to avoid focusing on it. You see, what he said is nothing new. Both sides of the house, they know that. In fact, sometimes they even accuse each other of bribing. Mm-hmm. It depends on, they accuse each other. What is the news? What is the news? There is nothing. So I think we need to move. And Nana, my concern is that we are moving at too slow a pace. The world is moving. We need 20 years to do what America did in 200 years. Because if not, we will need 500 more years. And that is not going to happen. We are now in a different world. You can learn anything in wherever you are. Sometimes these days you are talking to students or you go to give a speech somewhere, and when you are making statements, people are cross-checking on the spot. Somebody will get up at the end of your speech and say, no, what you said is not correct, because he could get the information. We are in a different age from 50 years ago, and we have to do our politics according to the times. If we continue to do the same thing all together, all the time, we cannot expect to get a different result. And this applies to all sectors. And I think that I still believe that our democracy is growing. I think it is growing a bit too slow for comfort. We are moving. We move 2 steps forward and at least 1 step back.
Let me go back. You see, we are 25 million people approximately, out of which 14 million managed to put their names on the voters register miraculously. You then have parties who have to champion 10 regions and God knows how many villages and towns and everything. The petrol, the manpower, the hotel, the billboards, the money, the food, everything, and then eventually come to 7th January and then you give them 4 years, go and govern the country. Unless this guy is Father Christmas, he needs to somehow pay for all these things. But I mean, he's not going to give it to us for free. The billboards, the T-shirts, the traveling, and the entourage, they all need positions. They all need to, pay back wherever they took the money from. So as a state, how do we make this cheaper so we reduce the pressure of payback?
Well, we have to make the necessary laws and put in place policies that regulate what we call election financing or political financing. I mean, in many countries that are moving on with their democracies, they must reduce. You see, when we talk about a level playing ground, it also means that we have to make sure that nobody is having the opportunity to have an advantage, which is not fair. So, for instance, if we don't regulate the way people can source money, and you can get money from any source, then people will come with all kinds of things. Actually, in other parts of the world, like they would make sure that you are not allowed to receive funding beyond a certain level. I'm sure with all the many things that we are not able to implement and enforce in this country, even if you made the best laws, and we do have them, the problem is who is going to implement them. And I think that, I am really concerned about the cost of our political, the way we are running our politics. The cost is a serious matter. And I think when elections are over, this period, between the period that the elections are over and maybe the first year, we should spend time reflecting on these things and trying to change the system. I have been saying that both parties, because we have more or less a two-party issue. Don't worry about all the people running around. It's two parties. Look, they have all had their time. In Kenya, they say our turn to eat. They have all had their turn to eat. Let now do something for Ghana. And by doing something for Ghana, it means that, because when I say they have had their turn to eat, what I mean is that each time they are in opposition, they tell you all the things that need to be changed and corrected. When they come to government, they tell you, why all these things cannot be changed easily, especially during the 4 years that they are in charge. We need to agree that you have all had a fair chance of abusing or taking advantage of the weaknesses of the system. Let's now build a strong system which will make life cheaper for all of us, so that this thing will go on. Because I have been saying something that, look, if this democracy doesn't work, the biggest losers are the politicians, not you and me. Because if this one is not there, what do we have? Exactly. We have already decided that we don't want to go back to where we came from. So if we want to guard this democracy jealously, then let's do something. Let's do some reforms based on cross-partisan reflections, which will also give something back to the citizenry. Because the part of the problem, we are still running a very highly elitist political system, where, when a party wins, in fact, why are the party people always grumbling, the foot soldiers complaining? The thing doesn't reach them.
Thank you.
So at the end of the day, it's not even that when a party wins and it's in power, then 50% of the population is going to advance or develop. No,
it is the cream of the crop.
It's just a few people.
Well, thank you very much. You don't have enough time to exhaust it, but since we are talking about partisan division, and even though it's a true story, you just meant to laugh about it. I met this guy who's seriously anti-NDC. So I said, but why are you so? And he says in 1979, he bought his kokonte. And for the first time, he was able to buy a big opoku on the kokonte. And as soon as he put it down, the soldiers said, hey, hands up. They were going to load cocoa bags. and every day he sees NDC, he remembers his bowl of kokonte. Yeah. And so for that reason, he's against it. Now that is dangerous, because you need to be objective.
But by the way, one thing we have done well on as a country, and that is also one of the things people praise us about. Despite everything, the tribalism or ethnicity issues is not so bad in Ghana as in other countries. I think we need another day to talk about that. We are relatively, that is part of what has worked for us.
North and South, Muslims and Christians can live side by side.
And this is social capital.
It's a big advantage.
We need to use it to do something better for ourselves.
Well, thank you very much. And as I say, tomorrow we'll be back to do it all over again. Thank you for watching.